Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Keeping Karlsson's Timmy Gang, the hot news show taking the world by storm, where we play a silly little game on a Canadian coffee chain's app to try and win imaginary points that will get us weak coffee. I'm your host, Brian Com of Keeping Karlsson, and with me today is my special guest, Ben Burnett of Keeping Karlsson's Short Shifts, or Short Shifts presented by Keeping Karlsson. You could. What do you prefer, Ben?
I think we go with keeping Karlsson short shifts. Yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
beautiful. So, for anybody joining us for the first time today, this is something new. It might be like the last time we ever do this, so enjoy it while it lasts. We play this game. It's Tim's Hockey Challenge, and for anybody watching outside of Canada, Tim's is everywhere in Canada, like on every other block, essentially across the country, and people have very strong feelings, as we talked about yesterday with our special guest Edward, about how they feel about Tim Hortons coffee and products. But really, I don't care about all that. I just want to play this silly little game they've got, and you can see on our stream that it's pretty straightforward. You pick 3 NHL players to score a goal. You submit your picks. If your guys score, you score prizes, and you get, of course, exponentially more Tim's Rewards points the more of your players that you pick that score. The trick, of course, is that Tim's doesn't make this easy on you at all. They give you 3 players to pick. You pick 3 groups from which you can pick a player, and the groups are not always that great. There aren't a great option. So yesterday, Ben, I had Marner, I had LeBanc, and I had Tyson Barrie. And Mitch Marner scored, which was really fun and exciting. So I'm glad that happened. And then the Leafs eventually lost in overtime. How did you do in your game last night?
I had the exact same card as you, as we very frequently wind up finding after we make our picks. So yeah, I did 1 for 3, and I now have a 3-day streak, which, as you mentioned yesterday, means that I'm just under halfway to a free week of coffee.
Okay. So yeah, you're on your way. I'm a big dummy. I was so distracted by streaming my picks. I never locked them in. So I would have been on a 4-day streak today, and now I'm at 0, which is really,
Well, I can
really.
see now why.
What's that?
Sorry, I was gonna say I can see now why this might be the last episode because you're mad at the show. You're blaming the show for your picks not going in.
Yeah, it was, and I was sure. Like, I checked my app this morning. I'm like, what? Like, I know I locked my picks. I remember the moment I pushed the button, and then I actually had the video evidence. I went back and watched the YouTube video from yesterday. Nope, never locked it in, and but I did lock my wife out of the house. So I locked something. It was just the very wrong thing in that moment. But here we are today. So Ben, do you have any general words of wisdom for anybody thinking of joining the Timmy's gang here for how to go about making their picks?
So this is a selective strategy, but my favorite little quirk of the game that I've discovered is that you can essentially re-roll your selections. Because as you mentioned, Tim's doesn't give you very good options in the very frequently you're looking through the slate and you're like, God, I don't know about any of these guys scoring, or nobody's really on line one or power play one. If you wait for one of the games on the schedule to begin, Tim's will give you a fresh slate of options, and oftentimes those are better than the original grouping, or at least, like they seem to have a higher chance of scoring. And so it really depends on the scheduling. Tonight is not a great night to reroll. Most of the games begin at 7 p.m. And so if you rerolled, you'd be picking between just the 2 or 3 later games. But definitely on weekends, I'm a big proponent of waiting for a game or two to start and then making my selections.
So what if, though, in those first couple games, I mean, it's not like we ever get the best players on the best teams to choose from, but what if in those first couple games, you have some, like, you might get a Kirill Kaprizov? Like, if Minnesota's an early game, are you still gonna wait for the reroll to get a different selection later on, or do you reroll only if the games being played early involve teams and players who, like, you don't think are going to show up on the slate and who you wouldn't be interested in grabbing even if they did?
So Kaprizov was a first box player, as I recall, for when we were still getting that option, and I think after his, now semi-distant but fairly recent hot streak, he hasn't shown up for a few weeks now. And so usually I find you can get like one or two good options in that top slate. I usually reroll if I can't find a second forward, like second first line forward or first power play forward in the second box or third box. That's kind of how I decide to reroll. Usually I
Okay.
figure like if you say Kaprizov's in the top slate in the early game, I figure like I might be able to grab a JT Miller or a Matthew Kachuk if I wait for the reroll.
Okay. Okay. So you're making your reroll decisions based on the second box, which is usually I just look at the first. That's good insight. And this is a Ben Burnett original strategy too. When you threw it in there, when we first discovered that you could make your picks after the first game had started, you just couldn't pick from the original team, and the players shuffled around. It opened up a whole new strategic world of how to play the game. So, Ben, let's without blabbing anymore, how about we talk about what is going to happen in our first group today? So I'm loading up the list. For some reason, Oilers Habs is mentioned twice on the schedule. So I'm going to assume that that's not going to cause us any problems here. And I have opened up the first slate of players, and I'm just going to roll through, and I'm going to tell you who's caught my eye. And then maybe you can share with me if I've missed anyone or who's caught yours. So it's not a solid group to start. Isn't Dylan Strome injured? Like, is he even playing? So you've got Jack Hughes, Mikael Granlund, Shea Weber, Darnell Nurse, Kyle Palmieri, Ryan Johansson, Jonathan Drouin, Carl Soderberg, Victor Arvidsson, Martin. Oh, okay. I'm going to let you please pronounce his name.
Martin Necas.
Okay, Martin Necas. So, Necas. I still probably got it wrong. So, we have actually, this is like an interesting collection of players. A lot of guys who could score, who have the capacity to score and the deployment to score, but just haven't lately. Like Palmieri and Arvidsson, I've been saying for a month, like, these guys should probably be doing better than they are. Jack Hughes has gone completely cold. Shea Weber has been trash this year. And then Darnell Nurse is doing, like, he's been amazing. And actually on Yahoo Fantasy, they've really messed up his future projections. So if you're in a matchup against a team with Darnell Nurse, or you have Darnell Nurse on your roster, you are looking at scoring 100 points. Like, the team with Darnell Nurse is projected to be winning their matchup at like 150 points for some reason. So there's a bug somewhere in Yahoo's projections for Darnell Nurse. Anyway, so I've named a lot of the most interesting names. The one that leaps out to me is Martin Necas. I feel like he's my first inclination of this group, Ben. What do you see of this collection of ragtag, rare scorers, but should be scorers?
I have Necas also in my sights here. Not much to add. I mean, he's been so good since getting up on the top line with Sebastian Aho and sticking on that top power play even as Vincent Trocheck comes back to practice. The thing that I'll sort of the one thing I'll say about the top slate is that you mentioned Kaprizov earlier. What I notice in the Tim's game, I assume this is very similar to daily fantasy, where like they kind of just are slow to pick up on breakout players, and then once they do pick up on them, you never see them again. So like we got 2 or 3 good weeks out of Kaprizov there
Yeah.
in the middle of February. And now I kind of feel like Necas is the current like cheat code guy. Not that he's going to score every game, obviously, but just that like he's clearly too good for them to, or the run that he's on right now is too good for him to be uh, surrounded by these guys.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a good point, because we did have those weeks of Kaprizov. That was around when I started playing, and then they're like, oh, people keep winning off of Kaprizov, so we need to fix that. Uh, just there we go. The stream is fixed again. So okay, so Natchez does seem like the sort of guy who would disappear. I feel like there might be a temptation. So I'm at least gonna name it, to grab Mikael Granlund, because he has been scoring lately. I'm just gonna pull up his numbers. And yeah, like he was injured for a while, right? And then he's come back, and I think he has something like 3 goals on his last 4 shots. So he appears to be a goal scorer, but he is not actually a goal scorer, right? This is a guy who barely, like this season, is getting fewer than 2 shots per game. Yeah, he's got 8 goals on 49 shots, including 3 goals on his last 5 shots. So someone who looks like he's on the up and up, I wouldn't get swept away in that Mikael Granlund scoring hype. I guess I'm still like so it seems like Natchez is the obvious pick, Ben. If you had a second pick, who would you go with from this list?
So I'm glad you asked, because I was just I think I have a bit of a hot take. Like, I would definitely look at Nick Ritchie on line 2, power play 1 in Boston, but where they can't score, it's like, that's a tough one. But I think my second pick would actually be between, this is kind of crazy to me. I think I would be between Kyle Palmieri and Darnell Nurse. And I hate picking defensemen. I try and avoid it as much as possible. But like, Darnell Nurse is on pace for 27 goals. I don't think he'll get there, but like, God, if he wasn't in the top slate, I think I'd pick him every time.
Yeah, Darnell Nurse, 12 goals on 36 shots. He's scoring once every 3 games. He's shooting 13%. And I'm just seeing if that's because of like and he has no power play goals. So at even strength, Darnell Nurse is shooting 13%, which is like, that's high for a forward. Darnell Nurse's career shooting percentage is 5%, and that's including this wild run he's on. So he's kind of like he's like Edmonton's Jeff Petrie. Jeff Petrie was once Edmonton's Jeff Petrie, and now Darnell Nurse has stepped into those skates as being a guy who gives you a lot of peripherals and goes on these tears, and good for him. So yeah, you might want to ride that. Did you mention, Ben? Did I miss that he has 6 goals in his last 9 games? Did you already mention that?
I did not, but I mean, yeah, I watched him score basically instantly in overtime last night. And that's the thing. He's just one of those guys, like, I know you and I are kind of like numbers guys, Brian, who sometimes will be like pouring cold water on hot streaks, but he's one of those like cheat code guys where it's just like, yeah, I know it's unsustainable, but like, I don't care. I'm buying Darnell Nurse if I can get him in fantasy.
Yeah, just go for the hot hand. I'm more a subscriber to this, especially in the short season, than I have been like generally in fantasy. I will like there is something. There is that extra jolt of confidence and like vibing that a player. See, I'm live streaming, so it's too meta to reference live streaming while you live stream. I wish I could cut this last 10 seconds, but I'll just keep moving. A player just has something going. They have something going, and we got to respect that. Like Jordan Staal makes it happen every so often, and Darnell Nurse is making it happen right now. I think those are probably Nurse, Palmieri, and Natchez. You know, Richie's, like I said, there's a lot of interesting ones. Like, nobody jumps out, but a lot of interesting ones. I'll also throw out Jonathan Drouin. Now that the Habs are all off COVID protocol, I think I saw Kotkaniemi was off protocol as of yesterday, and I think that makes everybody.
It's just Armia now.
It's just Armia. Okay. So Jonathan Drouin has 2 goals this season in 31 games. But he's never a huge goal scorer, right? Like 20 goals would be a reasonable expectation. He's only shooting 4%. And in his last few games, he has 8 shots over his last 3 games. Plus, I'm counting them up now, he's got 8 assists in his last 9 or 10. So he's getting assists. He's involved in scoring plays. Maybe he'll score one himself. But none of this is going to take me away from Martin Necas. So, Ben, why don't we move on to our second group since we're in agreement there? Again, I'll scroll through and I'll name some interesting players and you tell me what you think. We've got Zach Werenski, Corey Perry, Alex Chiasson, Phil Deneau, Matt Grishlik. Oh, Jason Robertson. Jason Robertson, right? Do I need to say any more?
No, it's pretty clearly Jason Robertson. He's the cheat code in box 2 right now.
The cheat code in box 2. Yeah, like he would in box 1. I would take Robertson over Natchez, I think. We talked about Robertson on Sunday's show, and you guys have been talking about him a lot too on short shifts. He's up to 21 points in 27 games, and that's after starting the season, like not doing a whole lot. Like he had a little run, but he was also playing mostly third or even fourth line minutes, and he has just caught fire lately. Only 2 goals in his last 12, but the shots are coming. If I'm doing some mental math, 15 shots in his last 4 games. And honestly, I could take that back to the last 10 games. He's averaging about 3.5, 4 shots a night. So that is plenty of reason to like Jason Robertson there. So I don't even think there's anyone, like, is there anyone else even worth considering? I guess, like, would you consider Deneau? I don't know. I have a feeling about the Habs tonight coming back after being postponed for so long against a tired Edmonton team. But not enough to go ahead and pick Deneau over Robertson. But do you think I'm wrong for liking Montreal's chances of scoring tonight?
I think Montreal can do. I don't have any issues with Montreal scoring tonight. I do think that like Jason Robertson's clearly a cut above the rest of this group. I would still take Natchez over him, who has also been super hot in the same sort of span. The one name that you didn't mention, though, that I think has earned a mention at this point, Sam Gagner is low-key having a fairly decent season playing in the top 6 in Detroit, getting power play minutes. Like, you know, I wouldn't... If he was a box 3 option, I would definitely take Sam Gagner.
Okay, I definitely thought you were going to go with Rocco Grimaldi and his rooster that he pulled the other night. But Sam Gagner is an interesting choice. I'm just pulling up his numbers now. Pointless in 8. Ben, are you sure about this?
I'm just saying the deployment is pretty good, and he's been I'm saying we're talking about box 3, right? Like I would never take him over Robertson. Deneau has been hot, like you said, but I just think his name bears mentioning when it comes to like picking like a miracle goal out of a hat.
You know, I like that take with the deployment. Also, he had a 4-game stretch recently where he had 15 shots on goal. So you want someone throwing pucks on net, and he's definitely a name that I just gloss over on these lists. So thanks for putting him out there. I love that Rocco Grimaldi.
Plus, big brain thinking, Brian. Sam Gagner, Sam Winner in French. So that's just good energy.
There's the Canadian education portion of this episode. Okay, so I'm locking in Jason Robertson. And then our final box 3, which is for those who didn't listen yesterday. Like, Ben, how would you describe the selection of box 3 players?
It's basically 4th liners or penalty kill specialists forwards, or like hopefully you get a couple of, I heard you say this, hopefully you get a couple of power play specialists, quarterbacks on defense, and then, like some scrubs who you wouldn't even add for their peripherals in fantasy.
Yeah, that's a pretty good description. Also, your forehead looks great. I'm just gonna mention that.
All right, I have 2 phones, so I can't, I just cannot hold them like a normal person because I'm a 30-year-old millennial.
Yeah, all these tasks that we'll never be good at, and we're quickly feeling older trying to do. Okay, so yeah, we've got the group 3 scrap heap, and just going through this list. Anders Bjork once upon a time would have been interesting there. He's not now. I guess you've got a couple interesting, like usually I always lean forward, because they play forward, and defensemen generally score on like 4% of their shots, so I want to avoid them as much as possible. But the quality of forward in Group 3 is generally so poor that you're going with a defenseman. So I don't see any forwards that tempt me here, and I'm looking at Charlie McAvoy and Adam Boqvist as my top D picks. Do you see anything differently?
Yeah, I'm looking at Anders Bjork. He was playing with Pasternak and Bergeron in the last game after Frederick got shifted off the top line.
Oh, I missed that.
That's good enough for me out of a third slate.
Okay. So you're telling me that Anders Bjork finish the game with Bergeron and Pasternak? 'Cause I know he didn't start there, nor did he play. Like, he only played, I'm looking at Frozen Tools now, less than 4 minutes total with them. But you think that that's going to stick for today?
I don't think I wouldn't bet actual money on it, but we're talking about the third slate here.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
like the true, like you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. I actually typically, if I have a few minutes to make my decision, I will pull up shot rates and figure out based on shooting percentage and shot rates who is the most statistically likely to score a goal in a given game. What I've come to learn is that most of these guys score like once every 9 games or so.
Yeah.
And so you're really like, it's a tough call. So anytime I can like maybe get exposure to the perfection line in box 3, I'll usually take it.
Yeah, I wanted to give at least a little thought to Maroon because he scored in his last game, but it's also he scored on the only shot he's taken in 5 games. He's not even shooting. He has 2 shots in his last 7. Like, I could keep going like to bigger slices and just show you how awful he's been as a shooter. Like, in his last 15 games, he's had more than 1 shot twice. So that's not somebody I want on my slate here. I don't know. You're kind of swinging me towards Anders Bjork. I don't want to, though. I really don't. Let's see. Who's Boston again? So Boston is playing New Jersey. So Blackwood could either be amazing or just hung out to dry, or both, all game. And Chicago is against Carolina. Okay, not too many goals are going to come there, I imagine. I don't want us both to have the same slate. You claimed Bjork before I did, and you had more reason to. I'm gonna go with Charlie McAvoy. Let's see what he does. How many do we know? Like, how many goals? One thing this app is missing is like those reports. Give me that info. I need really quick. So McAvoy has 3 goals in 31 games, which is 1 more than Jonathan Drouin, and he hasn't scored for 12 games. So he's due, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks for that extreme vote of confidence. You know what? Screw it.
I mean, there is no confidence in the third box, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're really, really
It's
like
true.
shooting.
This is the most time I've ever spent thinking about that third box.
Literally, Brian, Mark Stahl is in this box.
I wonder what game we'd be better at predicting the guys who wouldn't score from each box, like picking the guy not to score, although the odds are pretty stacked. Like Alex Romanov, Garnet Hathaway. Okay, I'm copying you, Ben. I'm honoring your presence on this episode by going with Natchez, Robertson, and Bjork. It's the only acceptable slate today, as we've determined.
Definitely not as far as the third box in particular is the one where it's like, I'm not trying to sway anyone on that. That's just my personal hunch, and I'm only going with it because it happened at the end of the last game. There is no guarantee they stick with it. Brad Marchand could be back tonight. I don't know. I have no inside info, but where I'm just guessing against power play quarterbacks and Mark Stahl, whatever. I try to defer to the forward anyway because they tend to shoot more. They tend to have higher shooting percentages.
True.
I figure if I go with the math, I'm better off than kind of following my gut, which is usually hungry.
I wonder, so on the days that you've gone 3 for 3, and I'm going to give you some time to look at this, I wonder if your third box was a forward or a D. And while you're looking at that, Kevin C. in the chat, hey Kevin, and hey Edward. Edward, of course, world famous from yesterday's inaugural edition of the Timmy's Gang. Kevin asks if Vladar is starting in net tonight. Don't know, but goaliepost.com is going to be your best bet. Edward says he thinks they'll go Halak. I agree. And Kevin's thrown out Miro Heiskanen's name as a bubble third box guy. I don't think I'm allowed to do that after all the nasty things I said about him on Sunday's show. Like, he is rostered in so many, like 87% or something, and he does very little across the board. But he has 4 goals in 32 games, more than Charlie McAvoy has. He does shoot more like had a 7-shot game recently and 2 goals in his last 8. So Kevin, I think that's not a bad pick. I don't regret Anders Bjork over Heiskanen, but if I were to choose a defenseman, maybe I would be swayed to move over to Heiskanen. So as you can see, I'm flipping through my history.
I like that pick. It's good.
All right. So the days I've gotten 3. Actually, I think the only times I've ever hit on the third box, maybe just because I always go D here, has been with a D. I've had Gostisbehere there. I've had Tyson Barrie there like all season long. He was my third in a 3-for-3 slate for me, but he's also the third that missed in a lot of 2-for-3 slates. Kasperi Kapanen was in the third box. Those were the days. And Aaron Ekblad and Drake Batherson. Okay. So there have been some decent third box forwards, more decent third box forwards earlier in the year when that's like Jason Robertson box 2 equivalent was having Kapanen and Batherson in box 3. Ben,
I hit on Batherson in box 3 a lot. Those were the days.
Those were the days. They really they got stingier, I think. I don't know how many like coffees they're giving away here through the game, but the quality of pick has definitely gone down, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think early in the season I was hitting on a lot of forwards in the third. Not a lot, but like a fair amount. If I got Batherson in there for sure, I hit on Kapanen probably the same day that you did. And then as they sort of wised up, I can tell there's a bit of a bend towards defensemen starting in March, like Adam Fox, Josh Morrissey, Tyson Barrie, Filip Hronek. Yeah, like I've said in the past, I typically try and get a forward in there. I hit on Nico Sturm last week. That was really exciting.
Yeah.
So fun to hit on a forward in that group. But otherwise, it looks like I'm mainly in for defensemen over the past month or so in the third box because it's pretty bleak.
The bleakness of the third box. May your day be a 1-box day, a first box day. I wish everyone a first box day. Ben, thanks for being here with us to share your deep strategy and insight into the Tim's Hockey Challenge. And please let us know. I mean, I'll know how you do because it's my same slate. But if we do ever have another episode of the show, it would be great to have you back. People can follow you on Twitter at ShortShiftsKK and at @BenBurnett_SJ, which of course is a shout out to your favorite hockey player of all time, Erik Karlsson, and the team he currently plays for. And is there anything else you want to say before you? I mean, of course, Short Shifts episodes every late Tuesday or early morning Wednesday, and then late Thursday or early morning Friday releases. You guys are crushing it, you and Lewis, on Short Shifts this season. Do you have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I was hyper focused on saying listen to Short Shifts because we're going to record tonight. And I'm thinking about how I haven't begun prep work, so don't tell Brian and Elon that. No, I'm just kidding. It's listen to Short Shifts, and I had an amazing time. This is my dream. I wish I could make money talking about the Tim's Goal Challenge, but right now it's still struggle days. We're still paying for our own coffee, and that's how it's gonna be.
Well, if you have an in, Ben, like you're a regular, right? I didn't even ask you your order. Do you want to like maybe you know someone who knows someone who knows someone?
Who what?
Yeah, I realize who can help you get paid to talk about the Tim's Hockey Challenge.
So I work next to a Tim's, so I'm in a bit of a Tim's phase, I guess, of my life. And my coworker is like close with all of the employees because she's worked there for so long. And I guess maybe I'll ask her if she knows the Tim's Goal Challenge people, and maybe she can set something up for us.
Here's a question: what percentage of Tim's employees know that the Tim's Hockey Challenge exists?
Oh my God. I have a anecdote that reminds me of this directly. Are you familiar with can this just be a Canadian fast food chain podcast? You must be familiar with Harvey's.
Of course I'm familiar with Harvey's.
So my friend of mine, we're like we've always that's been our place. We go to Harvey's, we get our burgers. The thing about Harvey's, if you're not familiar with it, you can customize your burger, so it's like you choose all of the toppings in like kind of a way where like you walk through, sort of like Subway, but for burgers. And one thing that people who like Harvey's love about Harvey's is you can get pickles on the side, and they give you like 15 slices of pickles. So if you're a pickle freak, it's the GOAT fast food franchise. A few years ago, my friend was visiting. He lives out of town, and there was this Harvey's promotion where you could pre-order. Essentially, you could create your Harvey's order and give it a name. And when you go into the restaurant, you say the name, and like they pull it up in their archive. So you like make it online, and then they can actually like pull up your order. He was visiting for New Year's, so like New Year's Eve, like 11:30, we're putting these orders into Harveys.com, giving them ridiculous names. We'd probably been drinking or whatever. And the next day, hangover, January 1st, we get there, we walking in so excited to place our order. And I don't even remember what I called mine, but whatever. I'm like, I'll have the Ben Burnett, please. And they had no idea what we were talking about at all. And we just had to like order it regularly.
Oh wow! So those Harvey's employees, and the connection here is those Harvey's employees did not know that this promotion existed or how to access it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just totally embarrassed ourselves at the Harveys, and like we still ate in, like it was just like a humiliating fast food experience.
I picture that whole thing starting with you walking in like the Vince McMahon gif, like walking with
Yes.
like the big swaying arms down like through the
Yeah.
door, walking in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. But what a great, the memory is worth more than what your order would have been.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, on that note, for more Canadian fast food talk, I didn't even know. I guess Harvey's is just Canadian. I hadn't thought about it.
I believe so.
All right.
Because it's part of that chain that has like Swiss Chalet and Montana's, all those.
I need to remember, like, Swiss Chalet is just so automatic in my brain as like it is what it is, but it's actually called Swiss Chalet. Have you thought about that? Is this just a moment I'm having?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, it's called, like, they've named themselves after an iconic building in Switzerland, like an iconic type of building, like a ski chalet, a Swiss chalet. I've never once gotten Swiss or chalet vibes inside Swiss Chalet.
I didn't know that. This is just this is my country, my rural Canadian popping out, but I didn't know a Swiss chalet was a famous building type.
Well, it's not like a famous building, but like, you know what a chalet is?
I've heard of them, yes.
It's like a ski lodge. And like, you think of a Swiss ski lodge, and it's like, oh, like somewhere in the mountains, in the Alps, some like fancy, I don't know, wood, like nicely built, tastefully decorated. And I'm going to have to, the next time I can, I'm going to just step into a Swiss chalet just to see how many hallmarks of Swiss chalets actually exist in there. Like, I don't even think they serve chicken in a chalet. Like, that doesn't sound like a
They
chicken. They do?
Oh,
No, of course Swiss Chalet serves chicken,
sorry.
Ben. Come on. That's like
Yes.
asking if Harvey serves pickles.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, clearly I could talk about Canadian fast food for too long. Thanks for being here. Thanks everyone
There's
for listening.
also a
No, please, tell us.
so, there's also a defunct American hotel chain called Swiss Chalet.
So that makes more sense to me. Like, a chalet seems like a hospitable abode rather than a chicken restaurant.
I'm with you. What is a chicken restaurant? It's like more of a Sunday family dinner restaurant almost.
Right, but the family dinner is definitely chicken.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
Edward is sharing that it was named after the Swiss style of cooking chicken. I guess I've never had chicken in Switzerland, so the only way to know if this is legit is to go over there and find out myself. Maybe one day I'll drop some francs over in Switzerland to try their chicken and compare it to Swiss chalets. All right, let's sign off here. It's been a wild ride through today's Tim's Hockey Challenge choices. Ben, thanks so much for being here. Everyone listen to Short Shifts. Everyone listen to Keeping Karlsson. Or just don't. But leave a comment. Let us know if you like this episode and if you want some more bonus content this week. And that will motivate me to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, just download.
Yeah. Okay, we have some lag, Ben. So I'm going to just sign off and say bye for both of us. And thanks. And may the odds for Tim's Hockey Challenge